Welcome to Gospel Truth with Andrew Womack, a teaching ministry that focuses on God's unconditional love and grace. And now, here's Andrew.
Welcome to our Monday's broadcast of the Gospel Truth. Today I'm starting a brand new series that I've entitled, As I Have Loved You. And this is taken from Jesus' statement in John chapter 13, verse 34. Let me real quickly just mention that I have a brand new series on this. This was recorded during the month of February at our Houston Gospel Truth Seminar. And I tell you, I think it's really powerful. Actually, I'm going to come out with a sequel to this. I'm going to have two parts together, and I'm going to do another teaching entitled A New Commandment, or A New Covenant with a New Commandment, and put these two things together. But this is all based on what Jesus told His disciples the night before His crucifixion. And in John chapter 13 is where they had communion together. Jesus washed the disciples' feet. Judas was still present. This is before he left and went out to betray Him. And Jesus actually washed the feet of Judas, knowing everything that would happen to him. And then right after Judas left, here's what Jesus told His disciples in John chapter 13. Let's start reading with verse 33. He says, Little children, yet a little while am I with you. You shall seek me, as I said unto the Jews, whither I go you cannot come. And so now I say to you, a new commandment I give unto you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that ye also love one another. By this shall all men know that you are my disciples, if you have love one to another. I tell you, those statements by Jesus right there are just pregnant with all kinds of meaning that I think that the average Christian has missed. Again, I want to make this point, and I will teach on this at a different time on a different program. But when he made this statement that a new commandment I give unto you, He was talking about in place of the Ten Commandments. Now, I'm going to deal with that in a lot more detail, but this is exactly what He said over in Hebrews chapter 8. He talked about the prophecy from Jeremiah chapter 31 where He was going to make a new covenant. And He says, in that He said a new covenant, He has just made the first covenant old. And that which is old is ready to vanish away. And I teach on that the old covenant is no longer the thing that we live by. We have a new covenant that is very well established in Scripture. And taking that exact same logic, when He said a new commandment, that means that this commandment has superseded the Ten Commandments of Exodus chapter 30. And I know that by saying this, that this is very offensive to a lot of people. And a lot of people are saying, what are you saying? Are you saying that we should do away with the Ten Commandments? I'm not saying that there was a thing wrong with the Ten Commandments. They were all right and they were all good, but the thing that was wrong was none of us could ever keep it. And it's not anything wrong with the commandments. This is exactly what Paul said in Romans chapter 7 when he was talking about the law. There was nothing wrong with the law. It was holy and just, but it was us. We just couldn't keep it, and it wound up condemning us. And so God gave a new commandment. And I want to point this out, that this is the night before His crucifixion. You know, if you would put yourself in the place of Jesus, if you came and if you spent 33 years on this earth, 3 years of it in public ministry, and you were the very last night before you were going to be crucified and you were going to be turning this over to these guys, you know, just by virtue of the fact that it's one of the very last times that you ever get to talk to them, I can guarantee you, you would be summarizing, you would be making points, you would be putting in, you would be saying things that are vitally important. You wouldn't be wasting words, is the point that I'm trying to get at. And by virtue of the fact that this was His last instruction, this had to be one of the most important things that He was saying to them. He was preparing them for a terrible time that they were going to be going through in between His arrest and then crucifixion and His resurrection. And they were going to be going through a terrible time in their life, and He was preparing them and telling them important things. And He said that a new commandment I give unto you. This is radical statements. And you know what? This was very offensive to the Jews of Jesus' day, and it's still very offensive to the religious people of today. Am I saying that we are now free to go out and kill and not honor our parents and lie and do all of these things? No, that's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying God said He gave us a new commandment. And that new commandment is to love others as He has loved us. Boy, that is one huge order right there. And actually, if you understand this correctly, if you were to take what He said and focus on this commandment of loving other people the way that He has loved us, this would keep all of the 10 Commandments. It would fulfill all of those things. Let me just turn over to some scriptures in Romans chapter 13, where this same point is being made by the Apostle Paul. And in Romans chapter 13 and in verse 8, he says, "Owe no man anything but to love one another, for he that loveth another hath fulfilled the law. For this, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness, thou shalt not covet. And if there be any other commandment, it is briefly comprehended in this saying, namely, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Love worketh no ill to his neighbor, therefore love is the fulfilling of the law." And Jesus said this same thing in Matthew chapter 22. James referred to this same thing in James chapter 2. And this is what Jesus is talking about the night that before His crucifixion. He says, "I'm giving you a new commandment, that you love other people as I have loved you." And if you did that, that would fulfill all of the law. You know, the 10 Commandments that were given in Exodus chapter 20 were divided into 2 parts. The first 5 commandments were all about things that you were supposed to do as concerning devotion and honoring God. About you couldn't have any other gods before Him. You couldn't make any graven images. You couldn't bow down to them. You had to remember the Sabbath day, which was really a picture of a relationship with God as expounded on in Hebrews chapter 4 and other things. Then the last 5 commandments were all about how you treat people. So the first 5 were about our personal relationship with God and relating to Him. The second 5 were all about how we treat people, and that's what this refers to in Romans chapter 13. And he mentions the last 5 of commandments, and he basically is saying that if we were to just love people as Christ has loved us, then you would never you would never break these commandments in your relationship with others. So look at this in verse 9. He says, "For thou shalt not commit adultery." Did you know if you truly, first of all, loved God, and this is a point that I'm going to make very strongly as we go through this, that you can't give away to other people what you've never received. And so you first of all have to receive God's love for you personally, and then if you have received this unconditional love that isn't based on your performance, you are able to turn around and love other people who have treated you wrong. But one of the reasons that people have so much trouble getting along with others is because they've never received an unconditional love from God. You can't give away what you don't have. And so you first of all have to love God, but if you receive this love from God, and then if you give this unconditional God kind of love that Jesus had towards us, towards others, did you know that that means that you would never commit adultery? Now, a lot of people haven't thought through these things, so I'm asking you to stick with me, but this is important that you understand this. A lot of people are trying, a lot of religion is trying to get people to live up to a holy standard, specifically like with this commandment right here about not committing adultery, by ministering to them a fear of punishment. If you do this, God's wrath is going to come upon you. God won't bless you. And you minister all of this. Some religious people will sit there and talk about, do you understand that by going out and living a promiscuous lifestyle that you can open yourself up to sexually transmitted diseases, that you could get AIDS, that you could get all of these different things? Do you understand how this could affect your relationship with your family? Do you understand how this could affect your reputation? And they talk about all of these negative consequences, and they use those things to motivate people towards doing the right things. And we have a lot of people who are living a holy life. They aren't going out and committing adultery and stealing and lying and doing these things, but they aren't doing it motivated by love. They're doing it because they're fearful of the wrath and the punishment of God. And the Scripture says over in 1 John chapter 4, verse 18, that fear has torment. If you are fearing, then you have not been made perfect in love. Now, I pray that you understand what I'm saying. I'm not trying to change the standards. We still are supposed to live a holy life. But what the Lord is saying, that now we do it motivated by love, and this is what Paul is saying, that if we truly loved other people, you would never go commit adultery. First of all, if you loved God, you would not do that. That is a criticism and an offense against Him. He told us that we're supposed to have one mate, that we are supposed to love that mate as Christ loved the church. If you're a woman, you're supposed to reverence your husband the way that the church reverences Christ. These are His instructions. And for a person to go commit adultery, it means that you aren't loving God, that you aren't in union with God the way that you should be. You've got a deficiency in your relationship. Now see, you could either sit here and condemn people, God's going to get you, you're going to get sexually transmitted diseases, your reputation's going to be ruined, this is going to happen, and you can talk about all of the negative consequences, or you can use love, and love will compel a person to also live holy. But most people, see, don't use the positive motivation of love. Religion comes along and uses fear and fear of rejections to motivate a person to do what's right. And that's basically the way that it's set up. And yet it says in 1 John chapter 4, verse 18, that fear has torment. This is why so many people who are quote-unquote Christians, who are living a godly life, are tormented. They don't have the joy of the Lord. It's because they are just walking on eggshells, constantly wondering, have I done something that's going to offend the Lord? They are motivated to do the right thing out of fear, and because of it, they don't have the joy of the Lord. They don't have the full benefit of their salvation. Under the Old Covenant, this is how the Old Covenant law motivated people to seek God. It was through fear of punishment. You go out and do this, pick up sticks on the Sabbath day, and I'll kill you, is what happened. The very first person that broke the Old Testament law. And if you go do this, God's wrath is going to come upon you. Did you know even a lost person can understand that? And basically that's why the Lord ministered the way that He did under the Old Covenant to people, because it says in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 14, that the natural man cannot receive the things of the Spirit of God. They are foolishness unto him, neither can he know them, because they are spiritually discerned. Before people could be born again, they didn't have this capacity to receive the love of God and to love like what we do under the New Covenant. I know that that's a new revelation to some people. Some people may not agree with that, but if I had time, I could spend an hour verifying that when you get born again, you are a brand new creature. You have a capacity to love, to walk in the things of God. Over in Hebrews chapter 8, it talks about that you receive a new heart and a new spirit, that God's laws are written on your heart. There is a huge difference between a born-again person under the New Covenant and an Old Testament saint. Their heart wasn't totally transformed. It was touched. They could be changed to a degree, but we have become a completely brand new person. Old things have passed away and all things have become new. So before the new birth was made available, after the death and resurrection of Jesus, the way that God motivated people to do what was right was through fear of punishment. That was the Old Testament law. We now have a New Testament. Hebrews chapter 8, verse 13, and many other verses talk about this. And along with this new law came a new commandment. And that commandment is to do the right thing, now motivated out of love, not out of fear of punishment. Well, I pray that you're getting what I'm saying. What I'm saying is profound. And yet, because the end result is the same, you're supposed to not commit adultery, you're not supposed to steal, you're not supposed to kill, you're not supposed to do these things. Most people just look at the end result and say, well, that's just two different ways of getting there. What does it matter? Here's the end result. everything. It makes all of the difference in the world, whether you are motivated by love to do what you're doing or if you're doing it out of fear of punishment and rejection. And sad to say, most of Christianity today has adopted the Old Testament method of motivating people towards doing what's right out of fear of punishment and not out of love. And because of it, there is torment. Because of it, people aren't enjoying the benefit of the new covenant. They aren't really enjoying the love of God the way that they should. And yet Jesus is saying, I'm giving you a new commandment, a brand new way of doing it. Paul over here is saying that if you really love others, then you will fulfill the law, because thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness, thou shalt not covet, and if there be any other commandment, it is briefly comprehended in this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Love is the fulfilling of the law. Love will compel you to treat people better than the law did. So if you truly loved God, you would never rebel against Him by going out and committing adultery. And if you receive that love, God's kind of love never just stops with you. If you've received God's kind of love, it instantly makes you turn around and want to share this with other people. God's kind of love is people-oriented. It is not selfish. I could spend a lot of time testifying that when the Lord showed me how much He loved me and that it was completely independent of what I deserved, it was because He was lovely and not because He was love and not that I was lovely. When I understood that, immediately I got compassion for other people. God's kind of love will compel you to minister to other people and love other people and put other people ahead of yourself. So if you received God's love for you, you would never commit adultery, because it would be an offense against God. It would be a criticism of His judgment and the way that He told you to live. But also, if you receive that love and if you truly love your mate, you would never commit adultery on your mate. I'm going to say some things here that may shock some of you. But you know what? If you've gone out and committed adultery, I'm not against you. I'm ministering the love of God, but I'm saying that you absolutely didn't care about your mate. You were only thinking about yourself. And some people say, oh no, I really love my mate, but I just couldn't help this. It's not true. That's not true. When you go out and commit adultery, you are absolutely thinking only about yourself. If nothing else, you know what? The person that you commit adultery with, you are lowering them. You are tainting them. You are polluting them. If you go out and have an affair with a prostitute, some people think, well, you know, they've invited it. This is how they make their living. That's somebody's daughter. If you really cared about the other person, you would never treat a person this way. The truth is, a person that commits adultery is a person that it's all about you. It's all about your hormones. You forget everything. You know, I had a friend of mine who was a pastor of a church who fell into sexual sin and would have as many as 2 to 3 prostitutes a day that he would have sexual relationships with. And then he repented of it, and we became friends. And anyway, he helped me minister to some other people who had gone through sexual sins. And as we were talking about this one time, I said, I can't even relate. I can't even comprehend how you could have done such a thing. I said, I would be sitting here thinking about, God, how could I do this to you? How could I take the life that you've given me and cheapen it and go live like this and just, you know, void all of your instructions and all of the things you're telling me? I said, I can't even imagine how you got over the hurdle of thinking what God thought about you. And then I also brought it, and what about your wife? If your wife found out about it, how would you have hurt her? I said, I just can't even imagine how you were able to overcome all of these thoughts. And he said something to me that was very revealing. And he said that when I got into things and committed those acts, he says it's just like I had blinders on. He says I didn't think about the Lord. I didn't think about my wife. I wasn't thinking about any of those things. If any of those thoughts would have come to me, he says, I would not have been able to do the things that I did. But he says it's just like I got into this lust and this spirit overcame me, and all I was doing was focusing on myself and gratifying himself. Adultery is an absolutely selfish, self-focused, self-love thing. You aren't thinking about God, you aren't thinking about anybody else. So you can either try and get people to quit doing that by putting fear around them and restraining the actions, and they may not go do the physical actions, but in their heart they'd still be lusting. They'd still have this root. And since God looks at our heart, 1 Samuel 16:7, you know what? It's not pleasing to God. Just the fact that you didn't do it, that's better than going out and committing the adultery, but the Lord wants to go beyond that. He wanted to purify our hearts. And this is what Jesus is talking about. He's giving us a new commandment. Does this mean that now we're free to go live in adultery, that we're free to steal, lie, and do all of these things? No, actually, this commandment of loving God, receiving that love, and then loving others as you love yourself, it will cause you to live holier accidentally than you've ever lived on purpose before. But it's out of a totally different motivation. It's not that the Lord has just thrown away the 10 Commandments. He's got something better, and that is receiving this love of God and loving other people as Christ has loved you. If you haven't, first of all, received this love from the Lord, then you won't be able to use it in ministering to others. But if you receive that, it will cause you to live holy. You know, this same man that I was talking about, after he told me that about how he never one time let the thought about God or his relationship with his wife enter into it. He was just totally focused on the sexual gratification. You know, the Lord just spoke to me and He says, just imagine this. What would it be like if you were going into a prostitute and right before you all got in bed, you just say, well, let's pray and let's ask God to be glorified. And you try and bring God into that relationship. I've never done this, but I would imagine that that would absolutely kill that entire thing, that you could not go through and have sexual relationship with a prostitute if you prayed over it and asked God to be glorified. See, if you were God-focused, if you were thinking about His great love for you, if you were thinking about your mate more than you're thinking about yourself, you would never, never go commit adultery. And that's exactly what Paul's saying in Romans chapter 13. And so this is the point I'm trying to get across. I'm going to be preaching on this for weeks, trying to make this point. But there is an absolute different way now of God motivating us to living holy. And it is through love. He says, a new commandment I give unto you, that you love others the way that I have loved you. And man, there's a lot to be said about that. And I'm going to be going into a lot more detail on this. But I pray that today has whetted your appetite just to recognize that it's not just enough to reach a goal of a certain standard of holiness. How you get there, whether you do it out of fear of punishment and rejection, or whether you do it because you truly love God and love other people, makes all of the difference in the world. I've got a lot of other scriptures I'll be bringing to bear on that. But we're out of time today. I do need to mention that I have this brand new series entitled, As I Have Loved You. And I tell you, this is going to revolutionize your life. I believe that this would make a big difference in your life. So if you would, listen to our announcer. He's going to give you this information about how you can get these new products that we're offering. And please call or write today, and then join me again tomorrow as we continue the gospel truth.
Are you satisfied with your life? How about your relationship with God? Is it as strong as you'd like it to be? Well, maybe it's time for a change. 5 ways to change your life with Charis Bible College. Day school, night school, extension schools, online, and correspondence school. Since 1994, Charis Bible College has been in the business of changing lives. Changing the lives of students from ages 18 to 88.
All walks of life with one common goal, one common belief, one common truth, and it's Jesus Christ.
Nobody teaches like these here. You know why? Because they teach you to know Jesus.
At CBC, you'll discover your gifting and purpose. Become equipped with practical knowledge and first-hand ministry experience. And be transformed by the almost too good to be true news of God's unconditional love and grace. Day students enjoy direct interaction with staff and faculty, as well as adjunct and elective instructors in a live classroom setting. while night school students participate in both live and recorded DVD instruction in a smaller, more intimate setting. If you can't attend classes at our main campus in Colorado Springs, don't despair. You can still attend CBC at any of our many extension schools located literally around the world. Perhaps CBC's online school is more suited to your schedule or location. Learn in the comfort of your own home, workplace, or even your local coffee shop, working with a Charis Bible College online facilitator. If you don't have a computer or access to the internet, you can take advantage of our CBC correspondence classes. Begin when you're ready. Study at your own pace. 5 ways to change your life. Day school, night school, CBC extension schools, CBC online, and CBC correspondence school. Check us out right now at charisbiblecollege.org. Come on, what are you waiting for? Change your life and change the world.
Andrew's complete teaching titled As I Have Loved You was recorded live at a recent Gospel Truth seminar. It's available on either CD or DVD, or you can get the DVD as seen on TV. Each is available for a gift of any amount when you write or call. This series is also available for audio download absolutely free from our website. Go to awmi.net and click on Today's TV Offer to see all the ways you can get this teaching. The first audio teaching in today's series is titled A New Commandment. It's available for a gift of any amount when you write or call. We encourage everyone to give, but for those who could not or would not give anything, Andrew and his partners will provide this first CD free of charge. We'd like to remind you that we're offering Andrew's latest book titled Financial Stewardship for a gift of any amount. Contact us today to get your copy. A Spanish version is also available. You can use your credit card to order resources through our website. While there, you can discover more product details and download free additional resources. Or you can order through our helpline Monday through Friday from 4:30 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. Mountain Time. Our helpline number is 719-635-1111. If the lines are busy, remember you can order ministry materials 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at awmi.net. To write us, use the address on your screen. We appreciate your generosity and hope to hear from you today. Join us again tomorrow as Andrew continues his teaching titled, As I Have Loved You.
It's all about love. Receive my love for you. And then the way that I have loved you, you love other people. And that's all of the restrictions that he placed on us.
That's tomorrow on The Gospel Truth with Andrew Womack.